Come to Candlelight Inn, home of the original Chicken George and Jan Sauce. Dine in, carry out, and catering available. Located in Rock Falls and Sterling, Illinois, as well as Clinton, Iowa. Come try our original Chicken George today.
Need a roof, vinyl windows, or doors? Call R.E. Duchesne Construction. With an A-plus rating for the Better Business Bureau and servicing Will, Grundy, and Kendall counties, call R.E. Duchesne. 815-722-2821. Financing available. Find out more online at reduchene.com.
Are going to come right down to the wire. Yeah, he really likes this field. Team of the Week MVP.
I like Reich.
I like Reich.
Since 2016, it's been my privilege to represent the people of the 63rd District. I want to continue representing you as an independent voice in Springfield.
I like Reich. We like Reich.
We're here to help you with your problems that result from an automobile accident or an injury on the job or the loss of a loved one. There's no reason you should go through this alone and guess that you're doing things right.
We deal with tragedies that affect families and individuals every day.
Come here and protect your interests. We've been doing this collectively for over 100 years. Let's put that experience to work for you.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back and welcome into the Friday Night Drive podcast. I am Kyle Nabors along with Steve Soucie. It is Monday morning, November 27th, and the 2023 football season, Souce, it's officially in the books, man. We were down in Normal all weekend long for 8 state championship games. It was a good weekend, man. Did I lose you to start the show?
Yeah.
Zeus, you with me?
There we go. I think I'm back.
All right. I have a little technical difficulty to start the show this morning here. Let's see. Zeus, all right. I think you're live with me here. Yeah, I was saying 8 state championship games down in Normal. Had a good weekend. Let's start with some your thoughts on it.
You know, it was really kind of the weekend in some ways played out exactly the way I thought it would. And then in other ways it went completely off the tracks. So that's what makes for an interesting situation because you kind of had an expectation of what might happen. And sometimes that definitely played out exactly the way you thought. But there were certainly some things that happened where it opened your eyes and went, boy, that wasn't what I was thinking was going to happen there. So it made for a fun experience. It definitely was a little bit different, getting used to the new venue and everything. But all in all, an interesting weekend.
Absolutely. It started out right out of the gate on Friday morning with a upset in the Class 1A state championship game. Camp Point Central not just winning the game against Lena Winslow, but handing Lena Winslow its first shutout. Lena Winslow getting shut out for the first time since, I believe, 2007. It was an interesting start to the weekend. We had a great time down there in Normal. If you are watching live with us this morning on YouTube or Facebook, you can jump into the comments here. We'll throw those up on the screen. We appreciate any question, the comments you guys have for us. Of course, you can. We'd appreciate it as well if you subscribe to the channel and leave us a thumbs up on this video. Of course, go to FridayNightDrive.com. We have all of our coverage from this past weekend up there right now. We got what we learned from Suits. We got more coverage coming your way from the state championships this week at FridayNightDrive.com. We'll start looking ahead to the 2024 season already, which we already got this morning. The Chicago Catholic League and East Suburban Catholic Conference, the new division for the next 2 years, they reevaluated that after just one season with IC Catholic and Wheaton St. Francis joining the conference to get it up to 24 teams. Seuss, have you had a chance to see those new divisions yet?
Yeah, I got a hold of those yesterday. Actually, a couple of people had reached out and provided me that information. If they hold, and we still have some possibility of maybe some districts coming into play and rendering it all moot. But if they do hold, I think the thing that really stood out to me was the alignment of the green. On paper for for what it looks like based on especially with the recent success that some of those programs have had. I think that was the thing that really stood out to me. And obviously, if you haven't seen the story, that's St. Francis Naz, IC Catholic, and St. Rita placed in the green division. So I thought that was kind of the first thing that kind of jumped out at me, as well as the fact that St. Ignatius will be moving up to the blue. And that was another thing that kind of, I guess, surprised me a little bit in the way that they decided to line things up.
Well, when you first see St. Francis and IC Catholic moving into that division, it's eye-opening. But we saw this year that they can compete in that conference against the big boys pretty well. So it's going to be interesting to see how they fare over the next couple of years. Seuss, kind of going back to this weekend, though, this is the first time the state championship back at Illinois State University in quite a long time. You and I were talking to people throughout the weekend. I found it to be pretty much overwhelmingly positive, the experience from, the people that I talked to.
I've heard some nibbling smaller complaints, but I mean, it doesn't matter where you go or what you do in that situation. You're always going to hear some of those things, but I would agree. Generally, most people were pretty positive. To be frank, though, I was a little bit surprised. I thought the crowds might be a little bit bigger on Saturday than they actually turned out to be. That I don't really know what the reason was for that. I mean, some had speculated, maybe the weather wasn't exactly superior, but I disagree. I actually think that maybe they thought the weather wasn't going to be bad, but in the morning, I felt like it was quite nice, to be completely honest.
Friday was pretty windy and cold down on the field and in the stands. Saturday, I thought the first two games of the day, 5A and 6A, it was pretty actually. It was wonderful down on the sidelines when I was down there. As long as you were bundled up, when I say wonderful for late November and for state championship weather.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. Like I said, I went down on the field on Friday, and my stance was, well, I think I'm going to stay down here for about a quarter. And when the quarter was up, I was like, yep, I'm going to go upstairs now. I kind of followed the same blueprint on Saturday and found myself staying, well, I'll stay down here a little bit longer. It's nice. I can take this. So, it was, I always like being on sidelines. I feel like it gives you a little bit more crackle and a little bit more, I guess, insight as to what is actually going on the field. So I try to take that opportunity as much as I can. But overall, I felt like, especially for the first year and the transition year, it ran pretty well, and it did what it should have at the very least, if not exceeded those expectations.
Yeah, so Joshua Mayborn checking in with us this morning. Again, if you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube, jump into the comments and questions here for us. We appreciate it. Josh says ISU was a great overall experience. Went from the 1A game and stayed through the 3A game. Byron has won state championships at all three venues, and ISU was extremely easy to get to as well. I will say the in and out both days at ISU was nice. No problems getting in and out of that place, Seuss.
Yeah, it really wasn't. I mean, even when I left after the 8A game, I was expecting to maybe have some issues, getting out of there. Nope, I was back on the interstate within 5 minutes. So not too bad, not too shabby in that department. So overall, the issue at hand for a lot of people was, getting something that is centrally located. And for the most part, just about anyone you talk to, in getting to the state finals this weekend, most of the trips were, maybe 2 and change. That was like the maximum that I had heard, in people and trying to get there. And I think that should be one of the goals of, trying to put something like that together is, limiting the damage that people have to undertake in order to get the opportunity to come see those games, especially for the people that don't have any, if you will, skin in the game.
Right.
Your fans that are big fans of high school football that are like, I'd like to go do that, but I also don't want to travel 3 hours to do it. So I think that makes ISU, pretty ideal, at least in that grand scheme of things.
I get that. The other side of that, though, is like if it was in, let's say, Soldier Field at some point, right? Like, would you probably have a better walk-up gate and get more casual high school football fans than like Bloomington, where you're asking everyone from the suburbs to come back down now? And again, like I know that's not fair to anyone in the central part of the state or something like that. I'm just it's a money making endeavor for the IHSA. It's their biggest gate of the year by far. It's something they're going to take into account. They may talk about having it centrally located, but that it's a huge revenue boost for the organization. So I guess they don't make the numbers public anymore, Suze, for overall attendance. I do wonder. You said personally, you said a little surprised on Saturday, right?
Yeah.
I wonder what the expectations were for the IHSA and if they were satisfied.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the answer to that. It would be interesting to get some insight on that.
Yeah, this is a 5-year deal at ISU, by the way.
I think I think we'll get a better, I guess, marker for maybe, what the expectation would be based on maybe what happens next year in the same situation. I felt like, at least especially the card on Saturday, with so many programs with deep pedigrees and, heavy roots and being, at the top of the class, that we would have, stronger showings maybe from a fan standpoint than we actually did. I'm not saying it was bad. Please don't. I'm not saying I just thought it might be a little bit more.
Yeah, that's fair. Absolutely. All right, let's keep going here. Adam Anderson checking in, says, great stuff all year, guys. Biggest story of the weekend from you guys. Seuss, how about you?
I don't know if I can pick one. I mean, I think I felt like for me there were four that kind of stepped away from the rest of the group. On Friday, the 2 points of order were Lena Winslow being denied the 4-time championship situation, where I think just about everybody under the sun thought that was going to happen. 3A, the amazing offensive dominance that Byron displayed, setting, after I started to dig in a little bit more, setting multiple Illinois state records. I dug a little, this is an inexact science, but I dug a little bit into the National High School Federation of Schools record book. Byron popped up a couple of times in there based on the offensive production that they've done with national type records. So that was pretty fascinating too. And then
before you go on there, Josh had this question. I want to throw that up on the screen. He says, did either of you expect Byron to shut down Mount Carmel the way they did? No.
I'll be honest. I expected Mount Carmel to maybe score a little bit more. Am I surprised that Byron put up 60+ points? Not really.
No.
And the other thing that kind of gets lost in the shuffle about Byron is they did not give up 100 points this season. They played 14 games. They didn't give up 100 points. I mean, their point differential is enormous. I mean, I don't think we've kept records on this, but I'm pretty confident it's the largest point differential in state history too. So, that's something. Byron's defense really good too. Offense is awesome. Defense is tremendous too. So, I expected Mount Carmel to maybe put up a few more points, but I expected the margin to be pretty substantial, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I mean, I expected Byron to win handily in the game. I did think Mount Carmel would score a bit more, though. So that Tigers team, really good and has a lot coming back, too, Seuss.
Yeah, it does. And like I said, this is just, I think it's probably just the beginning for this because, boy, it's really put something special this weekend.
Yeah, and that was kind of a theme of the weekend. I'll throw Adam's question back up here. He had asked us, great stuff all year, guys. Biggest story of the weekend from you. Going over to the Saturday stuff then. A theme of a weekend of teams that were young winning state championship. NAS, 17 of 22 starters expected back next year. Winning that state title against Joliet Catholic was a big thing on Saturday. And then, of course, Kerry Grove upsetting East St. Louis once again for the 6A state championship. And maybe upset at this point is not the word to use, but maybe we should have expected it. But just, again, a tremendous effort from the Trojans, an incredible drive, 19 plays, 10 minutes and 41 seconds taken off the clock in the fourth quarter for that game-winning drive. It was a sight to behold, Seuss.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody after the after the game about this, and my comment to them was, I don't know if there's a football museum, but that piece of art belongs in it if there is. I mean, it was really, really well done. It was finally executed, and the one thing that I asked Coach Brad Seaberg after the game in the media room was, how did you balance that tightrope between needing a touchdown, but also wanting to squeeze as much possible clock off there as you could to deny East St. Louis the opportunity to try to answer that. And he looked me straight in the eye and was like, if it was up to us, we would have made that drive 11 minutes and 45 seconds, which basically would have exhausted the entire clock. So I found that humorous in a lot of ways, but it was really, really well done in doing what they did and squeezing so much of that time out of there and actually putting East St. Louis in a situation where they were kind of forced into taking one of their timeouts while Cary Groves still had the ball because they just couldn't let them drain even more clock. They needed to leave themselves some opportunity. So it was really, really done.
Let's see here. We got if there was Tyberry says if there was one class team, if there was one class championship team that you could name the best of the 8, regardless of class, who would it be, Souce?
I think just, taking the class equation out of it in the school size, I think I would probably go with Byron, just in what they were able to do and the construct of where they were at. No disrespect to any of the other champions. I just think what they did in the grand scheme of what they, the size constraints and how they performed, I think I would go with Byron.
Byron's a good choice there. If we're talking in that construct, if you just go to the 8, like which one was the most impressive, I'd probably agree with you, Byron. If we're talking like best overall team, I'm not sure what Tyberry was getting at there, so I'll take this route for it. I'm going to have to take Loyola. That Mount Carmel game, they won it in the regular season, week 9. It was really good. I'd love to see those two teams play again, Souce.
Yeah, and even when you go back to looking at that week 9 game, Mount Carmel had some opportunities that I think if you went back and said, hey, you think maybe you wanted to kick a field goal there in that situation, if they could do it again, if they had that opportunity, I think maybe they'd attack some things differently, and I think that would have been a fascinating opportunity to have them play again. No disrespect to the two teams that those schools played in their championship game, but I couldn't help having that thought as we went into that last game. I kind of wish this was a Mount Carmel Loyola Redux game to cap the weekend. That I couldn't deny thinking that in the back of my head.
How impressed were you with the way Loyola handled Lincoln Way East?
It's just one of those things that that these two teams had a certain way, of attacking one another because we've got so much frame of reference to look at from past games, and I've been at a lot of them. I was just really surprised with the way they came out and kind of the confidence and the authority that they displayed. I know the biggest thing for me in that game was, there was a 4th down play, inside the 5-yard line. And I thought the right play for me personally would have been putting the points on the board, kicking the field goal, putting Lincoln Way East down 10-0 early. But Loyola showed no hesitation, punched it into the end zone, and got a 2-touchdown lead there early in the game. So I think that's what kind of said, hey, wait a minute. They have a good handle on what they need to do to win this football game, because in the past, these games have been, you might get an early score, but then you kind of settle into this eternal struggle between the two teams. I kind of felt that was what might play out again here, but Loyola jumping out of the box like that, 14-0. Lincoln Way East was never kind of able to find the offensive rhythm that I know that they like, and that's a credit to Loyola's defense. But it definitely was one of those games where I felt like Loyola made great steps at the beginning of the game to kind of establish the tone and set themselves up to win that football game. And, that was definitely a real kind of surprise to me. I didn't expect them to come out and establish that in that fashion, the way that they did.
Once Loyola got up in that game, 14-0, it felt like it was going to take someone really, really special for Lincoln Way East to be able to come back. It just, you had not seen an explosive offense from the Griffins this year. They've been solid, but very, very good defensively. I just did not see a way for them to be able to put points on the board quickly. That obviously did not come to fruition. Souce, I want to go back though and kind of work our way here and start kind of, we've talked 8A here, I feel pretty extensively. I want to go back to 1A though, and kind of work our way back up here. Going back to that Camp Point Central game, 14-0 over Lena Winslow. How impressive for Camp Point Central, man.
It really was, and it was just one of those things where, Camp Point Central kind of got, I guess, picked on a little bit because of the fact that they were beaten pretty soundly in that championship game last year. There were a lot of people that were like, oh, do we really need to do this again? I mean, we've already kind of established that Lena Winslow is the dominant 1A program. But boy, Camp Point Central came out with so much confidence in that game, even when things didn't break their way right away. They just kind of stuck to what they were and played exceptional defense against a Lena Winslow team that is not used to having that happen to them. They are not used to having a situation where a team has kind of got their number and they've got to deviate from, the first couple of pages of the playbook. They've got to dig a little bit deeper to find ways to move the football. So
Camp Point Central actually caught Lena Winslow off guard a little bit in this game. So Camp Point Central, typically running a 3-man front on defense, came out mixing up its fronts, had a lot of 4-man fronts, and it was effective. They were able to get to the edges, and obviously, first thing, taking away fullback, but like they did a really good job of putting Lena Winslow, off center, I guess is the best way to put it.
I feel like when Lena Winslow is at its best, it's when they're putting together those chunky drives that, like, every time you look up at the scoreboard, it feels like they're in 3rd and 2. And I felt like all day in that game, I'd look up at the board, it'd be 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7. And that's just not ideal for what Lena likes to do. And it just forced them into a lot of uncomfortable situations. And in the past, when Lena's been forced in that, they usually dig up on the bag and they find something. Camp Point Central wasn't having any of that. So it was a really, really impressive defensive performance, and offense did just enough to kind of keep them at bay, where it felt like Lena Winslow was going to have to really pull a rabbit out of their hat to win that football game. And that's most of that goes back to a tip of the cap to the defensive unit of Camp Point Central.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to Class 2A, where you had Wilmington picking up its 3rd state championship with a 28-3 win over Athens. The Wildcats took the lead in that one late in the first quarter. Athens was able to get it to 7-3 at halftime, but Wilmington really, really taking over in that second half, Zeus.
Yeah, you kind of know what Wilmington's going to do offensively, and we've talked about this before. Even though it's so difficult to try to stop it. And I thought Athens was doing a pretty good job early in that game of, I guess, limiting the damage and not making it look quite as differential as a lot of times teams do against Wilmington. But it really got to a situation late in that football game where Wilmington was doing their thing and Athens really just didn't have an answer for it. And it was another thing with their defense too. Athens had an extremely productive running attack during the season, using kind of
104 yards.
Yeah, having like a dual back attack with both guys over 1,500 yards rushing, and neither one of them could get going against Wilmington. It just they couldn't break anything. They couldn't get any momentum. It was another one of those situations where Wilmington gets a lot of credit for how powerful their run offense is. Sometimes I think they deserve just as much credit for how strong their run defense is, because the combination of those two were just overwhelming, especially in this title game.
All right, going back over to Class 3A. Let's hit on this just really quickly a little bit more. So Byron 69-7 win over Mount Carmel here. 530 yards of total offense for Byron, of course, all 530 yards on the ground. Really, really impressive stuff from the Tigers.
Yeah, I talked about this a little bit earlier in the postseason about how I was at their second round game against Piatone, and I don't do this very often, but I went behind the end line to try to get a good look at the ball distribution, where the ball was going, why it was so hard to find the ball carrier. And being up top in the press box, it gives you an even better venue to study that. And they tricked me frequently. I'm going to be completely honest with you. They are so good at running this offense. It's really, really impressive. And you mentioned it a little bit before. Some of the younger players that are already playing a big role in this offense are running it like they've been, they've got 20 years of experience running the thing. I mean, it's incredible. So just an astonishing piece of work by this Byron Tigers team all season long.
Yeah, I'm blanking on the name, and I'm trying to pull it up in the box score here. We had a freshman scoring left and right from Byron, didn't we?
Andrew Talbert, yes.
There's the first name I was looking for. Andrew. Thank you. Andrew Talbert, 3 touchdowns in that game. Yeah. They're going to be good for a long time. Not that they haven't been good. I mean, they've already been good for a long time, but like this could be the start of or the continuation of a really good run here.
Yeah, it really could. It's impressive what they've built, but it's more impressive to watch it at its top form. And I really feel like that's what it was. I really think like trying to figure out where to set the bar for the next year's group to try to surpass this is going to be a pretty impressive feat, because just watching it on both sides. And then that's the thing that I mentioned the Byron not giving up 100 points this season. That fact kind of actually eluded me until just the other day. I'm like, it gets lost in the shuffle. It's like they're not just playing awesome offense; they're tremendous on defense too.
I'm trying to pull it like that. Let's see. Yeah. In this game, we're talking about how the fact that they rolled up 69 points and 530 yards of total offense. They scored 28 points off of turnovers. They forced 5 turnovers in this game. They had 4 tackles for loss. I mean, a dominant effort by their defense again.
Yeah, it was really like I can't come up with enough superlatives to describe what they were and what they have been all year long.
Yeah, and what they're going to be moving forward. Yeah. It's quite the show from Byron. All right, Class 4A. It's a game I don't know if we've even said a word on yet. Here we are about a half an hour in already. That's Class 4A state championship. Rochester 59, a 59-38 win over St. Lawrence. Soucie, a lot of points in this game, but it really felt like it was never in doubt, though.
Yeah, it didn't. Rochester kind of came in with guns blazing, if you would. They were really kind of on a roll, and we talked about it a little bit in the preview. I think the thing that has been, overshadowed a little bit with Rochester this year is how good their defense is. I know they gave up some points in this game, but a lot of those came well after this outcome was clearly decided. That unit kind of sets the tone for them, gives Rochester extra scoring opportunities. And you never want to use the words Rochester and extra scoring opportunities in the same sentence if you're an opponent. They're going to capitalize on them more often than not. It's what they do. Rochester even made a couple of uncharacteristic mistakes early in the game that I guess opened the door a little bit for St. Lawrence if they would have been able to kind of cash in on all those chances. But even with those things, even with those miscues, they were still able to put together a pretty dominant performance. And with that, Derek Leonard wins his 9th state championship in 22 seasons. Think about that for a while. I mean, there are a lot of guys out there that have multiple state championships. Not a lot that are pushing 10 state championships, but usually they're compiling those numbers over a 30 or a 40-year coaching career. Derek's just barely past 20 years at the helm of a program. So, and he's already got 9 titles. So I think Frank Lente's record of 12 is very much in danger.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was not the only one to get number 9. That was Tim Recchi as well in Nazareth. We'll get over to that in just a second. I want to hit on St. Lawrence quickly in this. So just to give the Vikings one last shout out, a tremendous season overall. Aaron Ball had 160 yards, 2 touchdowns in this game. He was in and out, battling some injuries in that game. A great season for the Vikings, taking it to the next level, Soucie.
Well, with St. Lawrence, I'd like to issue a formal apology to them. Of the 16 teams that were in the state championships this weekend, way back in the preseason, I had most, if not all, of these teams making the playoffs in my preseason projections. 15 of the 16 I did. The one that I did not was St. Lawrence. I did not even have them making the playoffs in the preseason. So official apology out to the Vikings. A tremendous season for them. Hopefully a building block for them to continue to be a factor in the postseason, because it was an enjoyable run to watch.
Yeah, if you want to give Souce a hard time, you can find him on X or Twitter at the Souce. Of course, you can find myself on Twitter at Kyle Nabors. You can find all of our content at FN Drive. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as well. Michael Dojak was on Instagram and TikTok for us all weekend long. He made the joke that he's quitting. He's now a TikToker. He's an influencer now. So that was an entertaining bit of the weekend, figuring out how TikTok works. I've never felt older than doing that over the weekend. Souce, Class 5A, Nazareth 38-20 over Joliet Catholic. This was a game where Joliet Catholic was really in control for the majority of the first half. If, Naz gets that field goal right before half. And I actually thought to myself, man, I'm not sure I would want to settle for points or settle for a field goal right here. Tim Rackey and the Roadrunners knew better than I did. That's for sure.
Yeah, it was a really impressive performance for Nazareth, especially in the second half. A couple of things in that game, boy, that I look back to in that first half. H.J. Grigsby had broken off a huge run. It looked like he was going to go into the end zone for about a 75-yard plus touchdown run. He didn't. He got ran down from behind and tackled at the 3-yard line. You're thinking, well, Joliet Catholic will just punch it in from here. Gets to 4th down, and they fumble the ball away. And it didn't feel like a monumental thing at the time. But if you really go back and look at it, if they would have punched that touchdown in, we might have been looking at a completely different script, not only heading into the second half, especially when you had, H.J. Grigsby, who was sensational in the first half, suffering that ankle injury that really limited his participation the rest of the way, still ended up with like 265 yards rushing.
278.
Yeah, so it's like, there were a lot of threads to this one, and there were a lot of paths that this one could have taken differently. But kudos to Nazareth for one, creating that turnover in that situation, and two, just keeping that relentless nature that has served them so well over the course of the season since starting 0-4. We can't talk parallels to what Nazareth did, because no parallels exist. We've never had an 0-4 team win a state championship. We've never had a 4-5 team win a state championship. So we can't compare it to anything. But I've been around these numbers and around these realities long enough to know what we saw there is extraordinarily unique. We've never had anyone get even close to doing what has happened there in the grand scheme of what happened in the regular season to what happened in the postseason.
And it's fitting that they did it after falling behind 20-7, isn't it?
Yeah, it really kind of is. Talking with Coach Rackey after the game about like the stern reality, and we kind of knew after Friday night in week 9 that they were going to get in anyway, but there were definitely paths, and we've seen it happen before, where they might not have. So I think about that a lot when we were making this run. There's only 2 seasons in IHSA football history where this would have been possible: this year and last year, because every other time a 4-5 at-large team did not exist.
Yeah.
So that is kind of putting it in construct. It's the math really worked for Nazareth this year, but it was really easily could have not worked for them.
There were several notable performances in this game for Naz too. Logan Malachuk, star quarterback, was tremendous once again, has been all postseason long. James Penley, a couple long touchdown catches in that game. But I'll tell you what, I think maybe the most impressive player I saw all weekend long, regardless of class, was Gabe Kaminsky, Souce. Junior for the Roadrunners, tremendous on the defensive side.
Yeah, it's hard to envision the fact that, and Nazareth has been doing this for a couple of years now. They've had so many young contributing players to the cause of things, and Kaminsky is definitely an eye-opening performer. He is the kind of kid that if you're if you're just kind of randomly looking at things, it doesn't take long to draw your eye to what he's doing and the damage that he's creating. Just a really special player for them. Also, like you said, a junior, going to be a huge building block for whatever Nazareth is going to be able to do in trying to go for the three-peat next year.
All right, Class 6A, Cary Grove, 23-20 win over East St. Louis. We've already talked about that incredible 19-play, 10-minute and 41-second drive a little earlier in the podcast, Suze. We won't spend a lot of time on that here. One thing I want to go back and hit on, though, is how impressive. You think about how good this East St. Louis offense has been all year. How impressive was that Cary Grove defense, limiting East St. Louis to 6 points in the first half?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not making excuses for East St. Louis here. That's really not what I'm doing. But, not having Tayran Martin at full strength kind of impacted some of the things that they were able to do. Latarius Woods did a really nice job carrying the football, though. So you can't really take too much away from East St. Louis and what they are able to do. He did a nice job. So filling in that situation, obviously a full strength Martin, but everybody's got to deal with injuries. So like I said, not making excuses. All that being said, yes, extraordinarily impressive. It never really felt like, even before Battle got hurt, and that was somewhat late in the contest, that East St. Louis was able to quite find a comfortable place for itself. It felt like they were just a step off, or the timing wasn't quite there, or maybe they didn't get a chip block that they needed. It just felt like every time that it felt like they were about to get something going, Cary Grove would make a play. They'd come up with something, they'd do something, and that was absolutely integral to their success in this game. East St. Louis coach Darren Sunkett mentioned a little bit before the game that they didn't feel like they could be really effective, going up top, and that's something that East St. Louis really, really likes to do because of what Cary Grove was kind of doing with a little bit of an umbrella out there defensively, making it difficult for them to just kind of air it out and open it up. And that's a big component in their offense. I'm still surprised that they didn't try it, at least try it a couple of times just to see if it was there for them. But no, I mean, Cary Grove across the board just kind of checked all the boxes that they needed to in order to be successful against East St. Louis.
That is one thing I'll say about East St. Louis. This was the first time I got to see them live in person this year, and having seen them several times over the last few years, this team didn't quite have the horses at wide receiver that they've had in the past that were, I mean, obviously Luther Burden, we were talking about over the weekend. You go back, Dominic Lovett before that, there was another receiver I'm blanking on again.
Antonio Johnson.
There it is. Thank you. But
Yep.
I mean, there have been some guys that can really put a hurting on defenses. I didn't feel that way watching this East St. Louis offense on Saturday.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more possession-oriented receivers than we've had in the past with East St. Louis.
Yeah.
I think Jesse Watson is the kind of guy who's capable of something like that. But like we said, Cary Grove, did a really nice job with a lot of things, entailing that. There was really very few plays where I felt like, East St. Louis was going to get a big pop. They narrowly missed one. The receiver, Rico Bond, was called out of bounds on a play that after seeing the replay, I was like, I don't know. But
yeah,
those things happen. I mean, it was an inch there, an inch the other way. But obviously, just it's very, very difficult to keep that offense in check in the fashion that Cary Grove did. You didn't really have any of those plays where you were like, oh, there's a breakdown. You just didn't see that. It was almost an airtight performance by them. It just really, really well done. And I know we've been talking about it a lot. People need to stop talking about it as being an upset. And I think, it's fair. I was talking with somebody about this morning, and I guess I'm gonna tamp down my enthusiasm for East St. Louis in the postseason until they demonstrate to me that they can beat take this offense out in that fashion. So maybe I'll pull back the reins a little bit on that, because Cary Grove has proved, and I don't mean this to sound like an insult. This is not what I mean, but Cary Grove has now proven themselves that they kind of are East St. Louis kryptonite. So it really is. It was really impressive 2 years ago. I think, and this might sound crazy to say, I think it was even more impressive this time because, the expectation was there that they actually could do it. And, the first time they went in, nobody gave them a shot.
Right.
Zero, no. There was an undercurrent of conversation. Well, they couldn't figure it out last time. Will they be able to do it this time? And I thought East St. Louis played pretty good defense. They they made Cary Grove work for it. I didn't feel like there were as many gash plays.
Particularly, like they in the second half, late, I guess, probably late into that second quarter and all of that third quarter. I thought they did a really good job on defense, East St. Louis.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you look at the giant drive, there was only one play that went double-digit yardage, and that was 11 yards. They forced Cary Grove into 2 fourth-down situations in their own territory. I mean, they did what you have to do to be effective against that offense, but Cary Grove just maneuvered, figured out a way to get it done. And like I said, I'm going to stop using the word upset to describe almost everything because I'm uncomfortable with that because we've gotten evidence that, hey, when we get to that stage, if you've gotten to that stage, I mean, you're a capable football team and can win in those situations.
All right, let's go ahead. And actually, I want to say quickly here, Chai Bears had a question in here. Do you think East St. Louis can stop this Cary Grove triple option next year? They have faced at least 4 triple option teams since 2021. I noticed that they learned and moved their secondary closer to the line this year. Zeus, what do you think?
I think like we just talked about, I think they did a pretty good job. Really, when it came down to it, and it's for East St. Louis. I mean, offensively, sometimes they get a little frustrated when they don't get the opportunity to move the football as often as they would like. And when a team kind of plays keep away with them successfully, they feel, I guess, additional pressure when they do get the football back. Hey, we got to make something happen right now because it might be 15 minutes before we see it again. So I think that kind of hurt their offensive flow because when East St. Louis is at its best, it almost feels like they're riverboat gamblers they're out there. They're like, hey, let's see if this works. Let's go. And it felt like there was maybe a little step of tentativeness to it. They're like, we have to capitalize now because if we don't, we're not going to get another chance at this. So maybe that tensed it up a little bit.
And I'm not uncertain that not convinced that we won't see this game again next year because Cary Grove, while they do have to replace a fair amount on defense, they'll have to replace, I believe, 3 starters on the offensive line. They have a decent amount coming back. I expect this St. Louis team to be good again next year. These two teams are going to be, if they fall into that 6A draw, Seuss, they're going to be favorites to go into that 6A title game.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's one of those situations when we look at it, ahead of time. That's definitely a scenario. I mean, one of the things this is a deeper conversation for later on. We can't talk about classifications the way we usually talk about classifications until we get the district issue settled. Because if you're sitting here thinking that all of these teams are going to be in the same classifications when if and when we go to a district system, that's not the truth. There will be teams moving from up and down based on how that system works. So you can't script right now and say, oh, these are the leading contenders for 6A or 5A until that question gets answered.
Yeah, that's a great way to plug. This is a good reason to stick to FridayNightDrive.com over the next month as this goes through the process here. We're not going to see a mock for the districts from the IHSA before this, but I guarantee you we're going to see a mock from the Zeus before this gets announced. So if you have an interest, don't have a timeline when we expect to get that up yet, but make sure to stick to FridayNightDrive.com. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at FN Drive, on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as well. You'll see that coming. Zeus, Adam had asked a question. Any more chatter in Bloomington about 1 through 32 seeding in all classes next year, or was it more district talk?
It was more district talk, and I want to make this clear when I make this statement. I am a giant advocate for 1 to 32 seeding. I want it to happen. When we talked about having it return a couple of years ago, I was very excited about that, but it is not a fix-all. I want to make that clear. We had a 15 seed make a championship game this year and win it. We had on the other side of the bracket, it was a 12. Just rejiggering the brackets would fix some of the huge problems that I had with this year's postseason. It would have fixed 2A North, the ridiculous imbalance that was created there. It would have provided an opportunity for maybe some of these exciting semifinal games to potentially be the final. But in some of these cases, if you go to 1 to 32 and you actually break it down like that, some of these games that people were talking about, that semifinal game was a championship game, we might have got it sooner. It might have happened in the quarterfinals. I mean, that's the reality of it. 1 to 32 doesn't fix everything. It helps, and it certainly helps fix some situations where we've had some somewhat poor matchups between North and South bracket winners. But let's look at the reality of the situation this year. 5A final was 2 schools that are from the North, let's be honest. Joliet Catholic and Nazareth.
Yeah.
4A final, the South bracket won the title. 3A bracket, was there? I mean, maybe Montini falls on the other side of the bracket, away from Byron, but 1 to 32 wasn't going to change that very much. Montini was a double-digit seed. It wasn't like this was a situation where Byron was the 1 in the North and Montini was the 2 or the 3. They could have ended up on either side of the bracket. They could have very well ended up on the North side of the bracket and potentially played Byron in the second round. That's what could have happened in a 1 to 32 system. So it's, like I said, I think it's the better way to go. And I think most of the time it's going to create a better semifinal championship round experience if we go 1 to 32 rather than the 1 to 16s. But no, I didn't hear an exceptional amount of talk about that being on the table. It was definitely more district skewed right now. And to be clear, that's reasonable because there is no proposal right now on the table to go to a 1 to 32 seeding. There is a district proposal that is basically being decided whether or not it's going to go to school-wide vote as we speak. That conversation's being had right now in terms of what gets put on the ballot for discussion, what gets voted on over the next 3 weeks, and what gets resolved on December 18th. So we could have a very similar football landscape in 3 weeks, or we could have a very different one.
We'll be back talking with you guys about that proposal throughout the next month or so. But let's wrap up this podcast, Suits. We talked about 8A quite a bit, but we haven't talked about 7A quite much yet. And that was a dominant performance by Mount Carmel against Downers Grove North. Honestly, there's not a ton from this game. It kind of felt like this is what was coming. The Caravan played really well. Yeah,
I mean, and they have been playing exceptionally well through this entire playoff run. I really like what Downers Grove North did. Congratulations to them getting to the final. For their sake, I wish they would have had an opportunity to have a little bit better end to this. But Mount Carmel was a buzzsaw in the postseason. They just were. They were on another level. We talked about it before. I mean, ideally, I would have liked to have seen them, match up with Loyola again in the final. I'd really like to see that game again. I hate. This is an argument for a different day, but I hate the fact that Week 9 game is played on Saturday afternoon, where everyone's focus is on who's getting into the playoffs and who's not. So I didn't see that game until 2 days later when I watched it on TV. But it's still, like I said, it still kind of sticks in my craw there, but that's besides the point. But Mount Carmel just a really, really dominating performance. I talked about it a little bit, and I know these will come out tomorrow, the final Friday Night Drive Power Rankings. The resolution for who ended up being the number 1 team was pretty easy in the grand scheme of things. I wish I would have had more to debate in my mind.
Ooh, I like the tease there. I like the tease, Souce.
Yep.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you, everyone who joined us this morning for Live with Friday Night Drive. We appreciate it. We will be continuing to podcast throughout the postseason, obviously not twice a week. We're still working on a schedule. We'll let you guys know. We'll come on, maybe not live as often, but every once in a while, I think we should do this live, Souce. It's been fun talking with you guys throughout this postseason. If you'd like us to continue doing these live throughout the offseason every once in a while, shoot us a message on Twitter. You can find me at Kyle Nabors. You can find Souce on Twitter at the Souce. Souce, you got any final words for us from this podcast, though?
I just was really, really happy with the way that the season materialized, with so many interesting stories in the final weekend to follow and watch. It's hard sometimes to get to the end of the season and feel like you've got some closure on things. But I really kind of feel like we did here. We had a lot of stories conclude in an interesting way, and saw a lot of things that we have also to look forward to in the future. A lot of really outstanding underclassmen players that I think will be the building blocks of the 2024 and 2025 seasons. But overall, still trying to get caught back up on my rest. I'm still a little wore out from the weekend, but it is it definitely was a good time had by most, I think, in regards to, obviously some people didn't get the results that they were hoping for, but the ride sure was fun.
Chai Bear says, any opinions on the public versus private school argument seen on Twitter? First off, I'll say that we don't got enough time in this podcast to go over that. It seems like a good one. We'll be talking about it in the future, but honestly, just offhand, it's the same argument and it's been every year. It's not going to change, Souce. What else can we say about it?
I think the one thing that really concerns me about this debate is the number of people that are pushing for separate classifications. I think that we just lose a lot of flavor. I really do. I think there are adjustments that can and probably should be made, but as far as like just completely separating it, I think if you asked the people that are actually competing in the games, do you want the opportunity to prove that you are the best, or do you want a watered down system that has more teams winning titles? I think most competitors are going to want that challenge. Do we have to fix some of the current situation? Yeah, but I don't think, I hope that the ultimate solution is not separating the privates and publics. I really hope that that's not what we end up going with. But more restrictive multipliers, things that, maybe level the playing field a little bit more. I would be all for, and I'd be more than willing to discuss my thoughts about it with anybody who wants to listen. But I don't think the solution is separating the classes. I just don't.
Yeah. I agree with you, Souce. But let's get into that a little bit more, Chai Bears, on a future podcast. There's really a lot to unpack there. Some guests we can have on. It is a good debate every year. But all right, we're going to go ahead and sign off for now. For Steve Soucie, I am Kyle Nabors. We appreciate everyone who joined us live this morning and everyone who's joined us all season long. We appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Everyone have a good week. We'll talk to you guys later.
Come to Candlelight Inn, home of the original Chicken George and Jan Sauce. Dine in, carry out, and catering available. Located in Rock Falls and Sterling, Illinois, as well as Clinton, Iowa. Come try our original Chicken George today.
Need a roof, vinyl windows, or doors? Call R.E. Duchesne Construction. With an A-plus rating for the Better Business Bureau and servicing Will, Grundy, and Kendall counties, call R.E. Duchesne. 815-722-2821. Financing available. Find out more online at reduchene.com.
Are going to come right down to the wire.
Yeah, he really likes this field.
Team of the Week MVP.
I like like Reich.
I like Reich.
Since 2016, it's been my privilege to represent the people of the 63rd District. I want to continue representing you as an independent voice in Springfield.
I like Reich. We like Reich.
We're here to help you with your problems that result from an automobile accident or an injury on the job or the loss of a loved one. There's no reason you should go through this alone and guess that you're doing things right.
We deal with tragedies that affect families and individuals every day.
Come here and protect your interests. We've been doing this collectively for over 100 years. Let's put that experience to work for you.